where we're here August 15th, 2009. Sometimes life just gives you blessings, and I'm sitting here in the Hyatt Regency, and I want to thank the folks for letting us do this interview with Carl Muscarello. And that name might not ring a bell right off the top, but he's part of American history, American art, an icon. Alfred Eisenstaedt grabbed a great photograph back in 1945 on VJ Day. It was on Life magazine, the cover, of this young man who still looks pretty darn good, kissing a nurse on the streets of New York City in Times Square. And the reason why this gentleman's here today is to celebrate that kiss and also talk about unconditional surrender, a statue which, this is the statue we have in our hometown here that is been put up, and there's some issues and controversy about it being in town, if it's art, if it should stay here. And this gentleman is here today to be celebrated, and we're spending a little time talking with him today. And his beautiful wife, Shelley. If we can get a shot of Shelley, and Shelley's they're gonna be duplicating the kiss in about a couple hours, actually, about an hour. But Carlo, thank you for being here today.
My pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me.
I want to take you back to the time. Are you a native New Yorker?
Yes, I am. I was born in New York City, born on Lower East Side of Manhattan, born on a kitchen table by a midwife.
The kitchen table, huh?
Yes. Well, who could afford a doctor or a hospital at the time? I was one of 8 children, the 4th child, the first boy, which made my father very happy, the first boy. And then shortly thereafter, we moved to Brooklyn, where I spent most of my younger years, and then in 1970 I moved to Florida.
Oh, wonderful.
And I've been there ever since.
Now I want you to take me back to the time when you were a young man, and around that time in the 40s when you got involved in serving your country. Take me in briefly through that time period.
Well, when I was a teenager, World War II was in full swing. And World War II was a very popular war in the sense where everybody was behind it. All the Americans were behind the servicemen and World War II. It wasn't like Korea or Vietnam or even Iraq, where there's so many people against it, and everybody was behind it. So that's why when World War II was over, I mean, everybody was happy, complete bedlam. A terrible war was over.
And you served where in the field in the arena?
I was assigned to a submarine tender, and I spent part of the time in the Atlantic, in the Caribbean, and shortly in the Pacific. Spent most of my time around the Panama Canal area.
So you were there actually how many years?
Just short of 3 years in the Navy.
All right, now I got to take you back to that day, that VJ Day. You're sitting there. Take me through the beginning of the day and just that how it happened for you that day. You got news that it was over.
Well, it was announced that we had dropped 2 atomic bombs in Japan. And I'm glad we did. A lot of people say, well, how inhumane it was to drop 2 terrible bombs. Look at it this way. Supposing Hitler or Hirohito had that bomb, what do you think would have happened to the U.S.? And the fact that we dropped the bombs and the war ended almost immediately was great, because so many people in Japan would have fought to the death because they believed that Hirohito was their god. Look at all the men we would have lost, not only military men, but civilians in Japan and around the world. So that ended a terrible war. So I was at my base in Staten Island, New York, when it was announced that the Japanese had surrendered unconditionally, and the captain of my ship said, okay, all you guys take 72 hours off. I don't care what you do or where you go, just be back here in 72 hours. Being 18 years old and pretty close to New York City, you didn't have to tell me twice. So a very dear friend of mine, Eddie Lesky, whom I haven't heard from in 30 years, is probably gone by now. I said, Eddie, come on, let's go to my mother's house in Brooklyn. So we took the ferry from Staten Island to Manhattan. The bridge wasn't built yet. And while we were down in the subway, everybody was saying, let's go to Times Square. That's where everybody celebrates. So Eddie and I, we got on the subway and we went to Times Square. And we came up out of the subway. Some civilian grabbed me by the arm and said, come on, sailor, let me buy you a beer. Now, when I was 18 years old, 2 beers was my limit. I think he bought me 12. So Eddie said, come on, it's about time. Your mother's probably waiting. And we went out into the street, complete bedlam, like New Year's Eve. Everybody was hugging and kissing and crying and carrying on. So I saw all the guys, in uniform kissing the girls. So I did the same thing, and it was a good bet that if you had a uniform on that, you were going to get kissed. So I kissed several women. Then I kissed Edith. I don't remember exactly who I kissed and in what order. But after kissing several women, we took the subway back to my mother's house.
And that's Edith Shane who you kissed, and it's been documented?
I didn't realize till many, many years later who she was.
Right.
And when she was identified by Alfred Eisenstaedt, the photographer, back in 1980, I was aware of it, but I never did anything about it. I figured, now, I was the sailor. I knew I was the sailor. My mother knew it. My kids knew it. And all my friends knew it. Big deal.
You didn't kiss and tell?
I still don't.
Let me ask you, though, that feeling, though, when you kissed her, though, did you see her, did it end abruptly? You guys kind of went your own way after? Give me that kind of blow-by-blow, if you will.
Well, what had happened, as I said, I kissed several women. I kissed Edith, and I gave her a nice, long, sweeping, breathless kiss. And after that, I said, well, there's nothing left in me. Let me go home.
You were done. You were done.
Done that day.
When did you grab the importance of that photograph? I mean, it was like shortly thereafter. You see this photo.
Several weeks. I had no idea the photo was being taken. Several weeks later, my mother was in a doctor's office in Brooklyn, and she picked up a copy of Life magazine, and she saw the picture of the kissing sailor, and she was taken back. She said, "That's my son." She recognized me immediately because I had a birthmark on the back of my right hand. Since I'm living in Florida, I'm out in the sun constantly, my tan has blended in over it. But if you look at it, you can still see it. That is the first thing my mother saw, the back of my right hand. Then she saw my nose, my hairline, and my mother said it was me, and you don't argue with my mother.
Was there any follow-up, though, to think that this might be the one, this gal, this nurse would be?
Actually, no, not right at that time. In conversation with my mother, she said, I saw you kissing this strange woman on Broadway and 42nd Street. Don't you know that if you kiss strange women, you're going to get a disease? I said, Mom, but the lady was a nurse, and my mother said, the worst kind. They're always around sick people.